Welcome to this class. This is really intended to be a fundamental for you. So question design serves as kind of the core of your exchange. And today what we're going to do is set you up with some best practices, some really tangible strategies so that you're able to do that in a way that feels really light and easy for you and accomplishes your goals. I'll start by introducing myself. So my name is Tila Beischer, and I am a customer success manager here at Thoughtexchange. And that means that I work with you. I work with our thought partners for exactly this. I support with question design. I think about scalable onboarding, also produce these series of events. So we offer different classes for you so that you can learn more about exchange design skills. At the end, I'll highlight some of the upcoming classes that we're offering. So here's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be about 30 minutes, 20 minutes of content, and then spend as much time in a Q&A as we can so that you get time to ask your questions too. And thinking about question design, it's really that core muscle that you're going to be flexing. If you think about your exchanges as a skill set that you're building, it all starts with question design. And what we often hear is that feels intimidating to a new leader. The idea of how do I ask the right question? I know what I want to get out of this, but I'm not sure how to phrase it comes up quite often. So what we're going to do today is go through a flow of how do you start from a topic and end up with a question that really serves your purpose. What we're going to do to get there is think about defining really clear objectives. We'll go through our question design best practices. Then I'll teach you a couple tangible techniques. And I want to finish up showing you some resources that are available to you. There are a lot of different opportunities to have templates as well. All right. Perfect. And just so you know, I am alone on this call. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat for now, or you can save them and wait for the Q&A exchange that we are going to do at the end. All right, let's hop in and talk a little bit about building your objectives. So objectives are your why. They are, why are you running this exchange? What do you hope to get out of it? And asking the right question at the right time is really important when you think about driving organizational change. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about timing, about meeting people where they are at, and about how to drive forward exactly what you need from the exchange. So starting with that idea of what do you hope to get out of it, outlining exactly what are those data points that you are hoping to gather. Do you need to gather feedback on a proposal? Do you need to source new ideas? Are you looking for a team reflections exercise? What this slide shows you are some topics where we see a lot of thought partners start with Thoughtexchange or with thinking about doing this two-way communication. So lots of internal work, live events, and then organization-wide work as well. And what you would do is you would start with the topic. So you have your idea. I know that I need to engage upon improvement planning. I know that I need to engage upon roundtables or agenda setting. And then where do you go from there? What you do is you think about your topic and then build your objectives. So I'm going to give you an example to kind of bring this into focus and bring it into light. With the topic of improvement planning, perhaps what you're really focused on is thinking about the mental health offerings that you're giving for your staff and for your internal team. And what would your objectives be with that? And so your objectives could be to surface where people are at. You want to understand exactly how are they feeling in their roles in the company, and then to identify any gaps in programming upon which you could improve. If those were your objectives, that would naturally drive you to be asking a question about what are some important ways that we can support you, or something like, how are you feeling in your role right now? What can our team do to better care for each other or better care for our mental health? What are some important ways we can support your mental health and build resilience as a team? And I have some questions to drive you there, and we're going to break it down even further as we go through this presentation. But the first one is, when you're planning your exchange, ask yourself this question: where is your organization or stakeholder group at? And what I mean by that is, if everyone is in survival brain, if people are really focused on the details, think about last March, and all that people could think about was that transition to remote learning. They were living in a really fear-based place. If you had asked them a question that was, imagine what the world will look like once there's a vaccine, how do you want to plan for a return to work? What would have come up in that exchange was actually just the fear that people were feeling at the time. So you know your organization best and you know where to start. Oftentimes you'll start with surfacing those insights and then moving forward, moving up to transforming, moving up to visioning. But just like any project that you're working on, one question doesn't encompass all of those. So you're often going to end up running iterative exchanges. The second question too to consider is really, what does your gut say about how your stakeholders are going to respond? That can help you to guide yourself to the right question. So what you can always do is put yourself in your stakeholder hat and imagine that you are someone in that stakeholder group who's going to be responding, and think about how they're going to respond to it. Sometimes that can change the phrasing of the question or how you would structure things. A couple more questions for you to ask yourself, and I'm actually going to pop these in the chat because they are really useful here. So you can ask, what do you need from the exchange? What do your participants need from the exchange? And how are you measuring results? So what is the actionable data that you are seeking? Rooting it in that actionable core data will always result in a really strong objective. All right, so let's move into some really topical and tangible best practices for doing that question writing work. The first best practice that we recommend is to keep it simple. And by that, I mean use short, simple, and digestible language. Avoid acronyms, avoid any short forms. The reason for that is that if you're an organization who's using our multi-language feature, you want the question to make sense when it is translated. If you're an education partner and you're running an exchange with students, you want it to be readable at a 5th grade reading comprehension level. So have it be as simple. Another thing with the simplicity is, how do you avoid having it dive too much into a leading example or a leading question? You want to make sure that it's really crisp and truly open-ended. That leads to this next point here, considering sharing and rating. And when you're writing your question, you really want it to make sense in both the share and the star steps. So what I mean by that is that people can respond to it, but they're actually also able to rate the thoughts of others. So by that, I mean, how do you make it outside of the individual perspective? Let me give you an example. Instead of asking, what do you want in our professional development sessions that we are planning? What about asking something like, what are the most impactful professional development sessions that we could offer for the team? When someone's rating, they're able to rate things in a team mentality as opposed to an individual mentality. So they'll go through that rating process more. The next strategy is to get to the heart of the matter, and this is to ask what you need to ask. And so be really direct. If you're asking about a specific policy change, ask about that policy change, include the language of it, include the word of it within the question too. What we've also really learned is that the more earnest that your questions can be, the more responses that you will get and the higher participation. Those earnest, authentic, heartfelt questions outperform closed and guiding questions every single time. And my bonus tip for you with thinking about these three is, if you can't keep it simple, if you can't have it be earnest and authentic, then it probably needs to be multiple exchanges that you're breaking out into a series. So if you're actually asking multiple questions within one, then your data isn't going to be as robust and valuable. What you'll want to do is break that out into a series of exchanges instead. Let me teach you some tangible techniques to get there. So I'm going to teach you 4 strategies for writing the language of question design. The first is that your question should be truly open-ended. So nothing that would ever result in someone writing yes or no or not sure. You want to make sure that people can go beyond a single word or idea and be engaged upon a deeper level. So including a why within your questions can be really powerful. The second is that your questions are pluralized, and we touched on this in our last slide when we were talking about rating. So using pluralizers allows your participants to share multiple ideas or to engage with the rating step. So instead of what do you think, ask what are your thoughts? Instead of asking what's the most important, ask what are some important things to consider. It changes the way that people approach the exchange. They're not just going to answer one question, they're actually going to support with multiple responses and then to participate in the rating. The next strategy is to use prioritizers. So prioritizers are words like most important, most impact, highest efficiency, best. These are words that get people thinking in a rating mindset mindset before they even get to that point. So let's lean back into our mental health example that we were asking. If I had said something like, what are some strategies that we could use as a team to address mental health and resilience? If I had said instead, what are the most impactful things that we could bring to you? Then what you're doing is having people think about rating and building that priority set for you, which is really where you get that juicy data. My last tip for you here is to keep things general. And so this is a fine balance between being direct, being specific, and also being general. And so what I mean by this is that you're asking about the topic, but you're not digging into perhaps just one very niche thing that only one person would be able to answer and rate. So you really want it to truly make sense in the rating step. And let me give you an example. So if you were thinking again about that professional development idea that we've been throwing around here, that exchange, instead of asking what are the most impactful steps that you have implemented for professional development, what about asking something like, what are some important things that we could do for professional development? Notice that that language is really inclusive. It's moving from an I or a you to a we or an our. All right, that's the really strong tutorial, or that was the presentation component. I'm going to move into a bit of a tutorial now. I want to show you two resources that are available to you when it comes to actually coming up with questions. We have something called the Exchange Gallery, and I'm curious, can you use the raise hand function if you have used the Exchange Gallery before or seen the Exchange Gallery? We're at about 50-50. Interesting. Actually, we're at about, so far, we're at about a quarter. So that's really interesting. So this will be new for some of you. For some of you, this is going to be a refresher, which is great because we've actually recently updated the Exchange Gallery. The Exchange Gallery is a library of templated exchanges for you to serve you as you're getting used to using Thoughtexchange and to save you the work of reinventing the wheel. So you access Exchange Gallery by clicking on Create, and then here you can click on From Exchange Gallery. And this is unique for our corporate or our private sector partners and then our education partners. So we're looking right now at our corporate version of this. So this is going to be really useful for anyone here who is not an education leader. For any education leaders who are here, when you open this up in your account, you're actually going to see a lot of information specific to the demands of being an education leader. So topics about reopening schools, about distance learning. And what you can do here is really explore different topics. Say you know that you were actually running an L&D training session. You could click on this explore button and see there are actually questions here that are proven questions that are going to work for different exchanges that you would run around an L&D training session. So if you know I'm going to run this session and then another objective of mine with the session is to actually highlight what are the key takeaways. So I want to cement that learning with my participants before they leave for the day. I could run this key insight session. What are some key takeaways or actions you can commit to as we wrap up this training session? If you wanted to run the exchange exactly as is, you can click on Create Exchange and it actually launches it for you. You could go in and edit it, add an introduction in here. This is another point too, is that the introduction messaging is templated for you in the Exchange Gallery, which makes it really easy for you. You can customize it. And it also exists up here, lots of templates for introduction in our help widget. So if you haven't seen this before, we launched the help widget last year and it has gotten rave reviews as if you have a Thoughtexchange team member supporting you as you set up your exchanges. All of our help articles are built in here. So you can see introduction tips, our 3-step strategy for writing introductions. There's actually videos and there's lots of templates in here too. And the same for question design too. So if you're forgetting any of the skills that we learned today, you can be in here, you're writing your question, you're trying to think about what does get to the heart of the matter really mean. You can click on it and it will land you directly in the article all about that. So lots of resources in place to support you there. Outside of the Exchange Gallery, there is one more resource that I do really want to highlight for you, and that is our help site. So I'm going to expand out to our help site and show you under creating and managing exchanges. We have a whole resource here of Exchange templates. So we know that a lot of our partners are running similar styles of exchanges, or we see patterns in exchanges being run. And then what we can do to support you is to put together templates. So a really good example is we know that a lot of organizations right now are working on diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And what we've done is put together a template with sample questions for you, some sample objectives, and some things to really keep in mind. We have invitation emails and introductions prepared for you too. So the reason that I highlight this is if you are sitting there thinking about, I need to run my first exchange or the exchange that I'm coming up with next, I'm not totally sure how to approach it, use the exchange gallery, explore through there, see what resources already exist so that you are not reinventing the wheel. All right, those are the resources. So again, Exchange Gallery, which you access just by clicking on Create and Exchange Gallery. I would encourage all of you to maybe spend 5 minutes later today digging through here and seeing if it piques any interest, sparks any inspiration. So what we're going to do now is actually move into a Q&A exchange. I want to give you all space and time to ask the questions that you need to really feel confident in going forth with question design moving forward. So I'm going to set that up really quickly. Question design, and I'm setting this up here so that you can see how quick and easy question design can be. If you're running something live like this, something really quick like that, you don't need to edit any of the settings when you're running a live one. Click on launch. And for those of you who haven't seen presenter mode before, I'm going to teach you something new here. You're getting a bonus skill today. When you click on presenter mode, and then click on present, you're able to run an exchange live in a virtual meeting or in a meeting. So if you were me and you were running a meeting and you wanted to gather questions from everyone, maybe you wanted to do some agenda planning, you could put together a quick exchange, click on present, and then everyone is able to join. So what I'm going to do is invite you into this exchange. Please join either using the QR code, or I have just popped the link into the chat. I'm going to click play on the timer and you will have 4 minutes. So share your questions and then rate as many thoughts of others. And then we will meet and go through all of the results and address as many as we can. If we can't get to all of the questions today, I will create a leader report addressing all of them and share that out with you afterwards too. A bonus of that is that you get to see what the leader reports look like. And here's a tip for when you're hosting your own presenter mode exchanges. Wait until 70 to 80% of your audience is in the exchange before you switch off of this screen. People will join at different paces, so you want to make sure that they have enough time with the QR code before you move to the next screen. And we have a little over half of you in there, so I'm going to move to the next view. And this shows us your thoughts being shared, and then they're going to shift as you go through and rate them. And you are all of these icons over here on the left. There's some really good questions in here. So if you haven't made it to the rating step, please do so now. You have about a minute left, 50 seconds left. Rate as many as you can before we dig into this. I am actually going to click close on the exchange. I will reopen it afterwards if you want to keep noodling after, but I want to close it so that we can see the thoughts finalize. When you are hosting your own sessions and using presenter mode, closing it when you're done with people rating is the easiest way to not have thoughts shifting around while you're trying to respond to them. So I'm going to double click on this top thought and we will address these questions. What suggestions do you have on enrolling people in the process before launching an exchange? How do you get them thinking about their response in advance? Absolutely. So we see a couple strategies here. One could be notifying people a week out, a couple days out that this exchange is coming, and do they have questions about it? They can start thinking about it. Think of that as your teaser. If you were running a movie trailer campaign, that's your teaser trailer. The other strategy that you can do, and is often useful if you're using a live exchange, is to either have people participate in it asynchronously before or after. So there are always people who feel most comfortable sharing their thoughts right away, and there are those who want to think things over and noodle them for a while. So what I'm going to do is I could leave this exchange open for the rest of the day, and you're welcome to hop back in and share and rate more thoughts throughout. For those of you for whom the 4 minutes wasn't enough, that gives you more time to participate. Next question, asking questions about emotional and confrontational topics so we can receive valuable feedback instead of venting. Absolutely, and this all lays in how you frame the exchange with your stakeholders. So being cautious about asking questions that aren't going to further divide is a really important part when you're thinking about running controversial exchanges or confrontational topics. And also really acknowledging how this tool can actually keep people together and highlight areas of agreement as opposed to just areas of disparity. So if in your socializing of Thoughtexchange, you want to lean on some of that language, this is a tool to keep people together, to highlight areas where we agree upon, and to be transparent about areas that we don't agree so that we can move forward together and address both of those. There are templates for that language on that equity and diversity template that I highlighted for you today. So I would encourage whoever asked this question, spend some time reading through that and adopt some of the language in your invitation emails, in your socialization campaign, and then in your actual introduction messaging as well. Can you talk about what makes an effective introduction? Sometimes I have a hard time deciding how much or how little info to include. Yes, I can. And I think that is something that everyone has an issue with because you're an expert on the project that you're working at, but your participants may have never heard about it. So there's a really strong 3-step formula that you can implement. The first is your why. So why are you asking the question? And why is it valuable for your participants to share their time? It is a time investment for anyone to participate in an exchange. If you can frame this as here's the ROI that you're going to get out of it, the more likely people are going to want to participate. Sometimes that is you're going to have ownership. You're going to have the opportunity to contribute your voice. The second piece with introduction design is the progress that you want to make. How are these results going to be used to inform action? They want to see that, and by they I mean your participants want to know that something is really coming out of the exchange, that they're going to see something tangible. They have something that they can measure out of it. So maybe we are using the results from this Q&A exchange to create a leader report that we will then share back with you so that you feel confident writing your own questions and writing your own introductions. The third piece for an introduction is a call to action. How do you participate in the exchange and what is moderation? What's the date that the exchange closes? There is a template exchange in the template introduction in the exchange itself. So if you click on that help icon when you're setting one up, copy paste the template and then edit it to just pop your own information in, especially for that call to action piece. It can save you a little bit of time in having to manually rewrite. All right, just saw a question come through in the chat here. All right. What are some tips around don't do this? Want to avoid unnecessary and unanticipated bloopers. Some tips are don't ask a close-ended question. So if you're writing your question and you think that someone could respond to it by just saying yes, then I would say think about how do you rephrase that. Another tip could be if you are reaching out to stakeholders and you know what's going to come up in the conversation and you are writing the question to be guiding or leading, then that's a no-no, you could call it, or a don't do this. A good example of that could be if you're implementing a new program and you don't know how people feel about the program, asking a question like, what are you excited for about this program could actually cause people to respond with, I'm not excited about this program and I'm upset that you didn't create this space for me to share why. So be cautious with leading or guiding language is the most important with question design. I think the other don't do this is being too nervous about writing questions. What I sometimes hear is that these are to, sorry about that, my chat just closed here. Sometimes it can feel intimidating to actually have to write the question, and that can be a roadblock to launching the exchange. So if you're feeling really nervous about your question design, reach out to your Thoughtexchange team, use those resources. Don't feel that you need to do this alone. We're here to support you and make sure that you're all set up with what you need in terms of question design. What tips do you have for using this to host a town hall style session? We have a masterclass coming up all about that. So I'm going to share this in the chat, and I'm going to recommend that whoever asked this question, and in fact, all of you on the call attend this. It is on February 16th at the same time. We are going to learn all together how to run presenter mode and town hall exchanges. So we'll go over that in detail. There's also a lot of resources on the help site. Can you edit a question on an exchange once it is live? Try to adapt the response. We do not recommend this. What this means is that you're changing your data set. So people who answered question A and then people who answered question edited A.2, you could call it, the response is going to be different. If the question is not working, then what you know is that you need to run another follow-up exchange and do some communications around that too. Yeah, so do not edit while it's live. Unless, of course, it's a typo that you're fixing. I'm going to answer one more, and then I will respond to the rest in a leader comment and share it back with all of you. If we're using the exchange with students, do you recommend altering the way the question is asked? Wondering if engaging different audiences requires different strategies. Absolutely. So if you are using a exchange to harness student voice, which we have a lot of events right now all about student voice, asking the question in a way that makes sense for students will empower them to want to participate and to see themselves in the exchange. So think about if you were perhaps running an exchange all about distance learning. If you ask parents and the staff members, what are the most effective strategies we've implemented to improve and enhance distance learning, and what are the challenges that you've encountered? For someone in 5th grade, that question could be difficult. So maybe what you're asking instead are, what have you liked the most about distance learning? And then in exchange, what do you want to see as we improve distance learning together? Or what would make learning at home more valuable to you? So tailor your language to your stakeholder group, and that extends beyond just education. As you are working with different stakeholder groups, there's going to be different language that resonates with them. If that is your organizational culture language, embed that in the questions. If that is your stakeholder group has specific turns of phrases that they use that you could adopt to implement your exchange more easily into their communications, do that as well. All right, so we're going to get to the rest of these in the leader comments. I wish I had more time to go through all of these because there are some amazing ones, but you will have replies to all of them. I do want to let you know that we have a whole month of masterclasses coming up, and I'm going to open these up here. Next week, we're talking about working with results. The week after that, we're talking about mastering the live exchange. And the week after that, we're going to talk about running diversity and equity exchanges. You can register for those on our help site here. If you feel like you need a refresher in the basics and you're wanting a refresher too on how to set up exchanges, I know it's a new year, we all just had time off. You are welcome to attend one of our Getting Started classes, and I'm just going to open that up here and then link it for you. Help if I could type, this is a real Zoom issue. Getting started. All right. Here we go. So these classes are amazing for you who want a refresher in setting up exchanges and question design basics and all of the details of the exchange design. We offer them a couple times a week. We have them tailored for our corporate thought partners and then our education thought partners. So I would encourage you to register for one of these if you want just a general refresher. Thank you so much for attending today and for learning all together all about question design. If you have questions, feel free to follow up with me, send them over email. And I hope that all of you have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you. I see a question coming in. What's the difference between corporate and education? Education is for K-12. So if you are a school district leader and you work with students or you work with school districts, and that's a great session for you, it's going to be tailored to school-based use cases. Anything else we ask to land in our corporate workshops, and we will tailor those to your needs specifically. School board consulting with parents. If you're working with a school board, then I think that the education one would serve you best, Farina. Awesome, and we will see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a really good rest of your day. Take care.